Welcome to the Teacher Connect attendance training video. Today we're going to cover the options that you have to take attendance within your Teacher Connect gradebook. So once you've logged into the student information system, you should come into a page that looks similar to this. And if you don't come directly into your staff schedule view, what you'll want to do is click on your staff main tab and your staff schedule view sub-tab. In this view, you will see there are several tabs listed below, but today I'm going to be working with my Today's Personal Schedule tab. One thing I will point out is that there is a calendar option here. So if you teach classes on different days, it comes into the day that the current date, but you can move forward and backwards within the calendar if you want to look at different days and different classes if you have classes on different days. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and I'm going to launch my Teacher Connect gradebook by clicking on the icon that is directly to the left of your course number. And this will open up the Teacher Connect roster page. And by default, you should come into your attendance page. Let me make a note here. When you come in, this will be your default view, but this is a toggle button, and what I mean by that is if I set it to the seating chart, I would automatically come into the seating chart each time I open the roster page. But by default, the first time you log in to take attendance, this will be the page that you see. You'll notice in the roster screen, you have a classes drop-down menu, which will allow you to move from class to class if you want to take attendance throughout the day. We have another toggle button here, which is your current students. We're currently seeing the current students who are enrolled in my course, but you do have another button which is labeled dropped students. And if someone had dropped my class, I could still go in and take a look at their attendance information if I was interested in doing that. Again, this is also a toggle button, so if you have it set to drop students and you exit the gradebook, the next time you come back, you will be set on the drop students list. So if you come into your roster and it's blank, check your dropped current students button. And just by clicking on it one time, it will take me back to my current student view. Now, I showed you the calendar on the main page where my today's schedule was listed, but you also have the same option once you're in your roster screen to move back and forth to view your attendance information for different days. One of the important things that you're going to want to do the first time you log in is, especially with regard to rosters, if you would click on the settings button. This is a place where you can come in and decide how you want your attendance roster to be displayed on your screen. Now, there's a lot of information on this roster. You may or may not want all of that information. So you can uncheck any columns that you wouldn't want to see on your roster. Like maybe I wouldn't want to see the RTI, the gender, maybe the dismissed tallies or the LEP or the 504, the IEP. So you can uncheck anything in here that would eliminate the column in the main view of the roster. You can also decide how you want your students' names to appear. If you want first, middle, last, you would make that selection at the top of the screen. There is a section here labeled Student Shortcuts, and those are one-click access to information about the student, contact information about the student, scheduling, and discipline. The teachers have the ability to enter in discipline incidents through their roster screen, and actually through the gradebook as well. You can have birthday icons display if you want to see who has a birthday today. Of course, we have 4 options here, your week, your month, or you can set it to a none. But the biggest thing that I want to point out here is by default, rosters are always combined. meaning I can show more than one class in my roster screen view. So in most cases, what we see is that teachers prefer just to look at the roster that they're currently set on in your drop-down menu. So we usually recommend that you uncheck this option and then click Save. And it's going to go out and refresh my settings. And now I am back to my roster view. We have a new feature that was just released, which is the 5160 label maker. So if you'd like to make your own labels for your class, you may click on this button. And you have a few options here. We can do a mailing label for the student, the parents, and it gives you an example of what it would look like if you printed out a label for your students. So just to show you how this works, I'll pick the student label and I'll click the Generate button. And it will open up in a Microsoft Word document. And now I can print my labels. And again, these are 5160 labels. I can export this page into an Excel spreadsheet. I can also print this into a PDF document, or I could just click the printer button and I can get a printed view of the attendance roster page. There are some reports on the roster screen. As an example, student contacts. If I knew I was going to be on a field trip with this class, I may want to print out a copy of student contact information. So you can do this, and we have some additional options. Right now I'm only showing guardian information, but if I'd like, I can also display emergency contact information. And again, just like on the previous view, you can put that out to Excel, a PDF, print it. Of course, I can run attendance reports, buses reports, and I can run roster code reports. And we're going to talk about that in just a moment, how we can use our roster codes. Now, what you'll notice here is each student is listed in the rows in my roster. If your district uploads student pictures, the student picture will display next to the student name. And of course, it's laid out my first name and last name. And the student shortcuts I had mentioned earlier, that's on the settings page, I'll go through these just to kind of show you what kind of information you can gather on your student. This very first icon, which kind of looks like a business card, is the information page. So if I click on that information page, it's going to open up a copy of my student's profile. And I have options here that I can take a look at. As an example, if I wanted to see if this student has taken assessments and how they did on their assessments, I can come in and see their Keystone scores and their math scores and PSSA scores if that information is uploaded into the system. Bus information, if that's uploaded or entered into the system, you'll be able to see any assigned buses the student has. I can look at the student's daily attendance information. How's the student's attendance been for this year so far? I have field trips, groups, lockers. Let's take a look at lockers. So if a student forgets their locker combination, it's the beginning of the year, if you come in and click on their locker tab, you can view their locker combination and locker number. Now, every district has different tabs that they allow their teachers to use. So some of the tabs I'm showing you, you may or may not have access to, but we try to follow typical districts and what they show for student information. On this tab, my previous courses tab, I, as a teacher, can go out and see how the student's done in previous courses. So if I'm teaching English or communications, in this database it's called communications, I can go out and see how the student has done throughout his career in his previous English classes. we have a tab called Report Final Runs, and this is where you can find grade reports that were done on the student in the current scheduling year, which this is the beginning of the year, so I don't have a lot of reports here, but I can go back and look at their previous year information, and I can see report cards, transcripts, standards-based reports, and if you click on the icon, it will open up a copy of that report. So let's see here. RTI referrals, this is a new module in the system, and if you are using the RTI module, that information would be displayed in here. I'm going to click my Show More because I have a few other tabs I'd like to show you, and these are ones that you're probably going to be interested in. One of the tabs that I really think is a great tab is the Schedule tab. So what you can do with a Schedule tab is you can come down into the system and look at the student's schedule. Now, one of the things you can do, let's see, we'll find a course for the student. We have a button here that will allow you to print assignment reports. So if I would have this student in study hall and I wanted to see how they were, the student didn't have anything to do, but I could look at their assignment reports and see if they owe teachers other assignments, or I can see and of course, this is the beginning of the year, so I don't have information in here, but you can see it would actually pull up this course information. Once the student has some grades in this class, you would see a marking period average, and you would have a list of the students' assignments, their grades, and anything that is labeled as a missing assignment would also be listed here. And you do have the option to look at different marking periods if you would like to. This is a useful tool if a student wants to know how they're doing in your class, or how they're doing in another class. You can actually print this out for them and hand it to them so that they can see their grades. Hopefully your students have access to the student and parent portal, so that may not be the case for you, but it is a neat little way to come in and just take a look at the students' other courses. There's a teacher journal page, which is where teachers can go in and record information regarding the student. And there are different log types we can set up for your journal, but I will show you how I can record information about the student. If I click on the New button on my teacher journal tab, of course, I can fill in my date, and then we have log types here. So right now, we just only have two set up, which is you can see on the screen, general and anecdote. And so if I would just select general, I can type in so I can type in the information and click the Save button. Now, this tab is controlled by permissions, meaning that the administrator of your database can decide who can see these logs, who can edit the logs, who can delete the logs. Now, typically, you would have complete access to anything you would put in. So if I put this in and I realize I had done it on the wrong student, I can delete that, or I can edit the information and add additional information to this teacher log. So this is a nice place to note these kind of things, whether you've called home to speak to the parent or things like that. And that's available on the Teacher Log tab. And the other tab I'll show you here is the Today's Schedule tab. And when I come in to the Today's Schedule, what you'll notice as I'm looking at the student schedule for today, I have a yellow bar. And this yellow bar will progress down through the day as your time changes and the students are changing class. So you could look at this Today's Schedule tab and know exactly where this student is located. At the top of the screen, if I wanted to see the next student schedule, I can just click on my next button. It will go to my next student in the class, and I can come in and take a look at the Today's Schedule tab. Once you're done viewing the student information, you can just close out at the top corner, and it takes you back to your attendance roster. Another quick access icon is the phone. So if I needed to contact the student's parents or guardians, I could click on the phone, and it's going to open up the information regarding to guardian contact information. One thing I will point out is there will be priorities listed. So by looking at this information, I would see I need to call the mom first and the dad second. And of course, if I expand the information, I would be able to see her home phone and her cell phone, and then what order would she like to, or would the parent like to be called in. If you would like to, you can print this information out so that you have a printed form. And the other thing you can do from student contact is you can view the household that the student lives in. And this information, this page will show you information on other students who attend the district and the grade levels that they are registered in. I can see a list of guardians for the student, any emergency contacts, which I don't have any entered in for the student at the time, and then any other household members that live in the house, like maybe an aunt or an uncle or cousin would live with them. They could be listed down here in my household members section. And again, we have our previous and next screen, so I can print this out for each of the students if I would want to do that. Okay. I have quick access to a schedule, so if I don't want to go through this tab, find the schedule tab, if I really just want to open the student schedule, I can just click on the schedule icon and it will open up the schedule for the student. And again, like I mentioned earlier, if I wanted to print assignments for the student, I could do that pretty quickly. I can also email the student or the parent if I wanted to. But when I click on that, just so you know, it's going to open up your default mail application. Oops. Here we go. Oh, and by the way, you can also print out schedules for students. So if the student has lost their schedule and you just want to print out a copy of their schedule for them, there are some buttons up here at the top right corner that will allow you to print the student's schedule. The matrix schedule is the schedule that we see used most often, and this will give you the ability to print the student's schedule. And I can print it by semester if I'd like to. Oh, and by the way, you can do different things like add your locker combination to the schedule, things like that. And the last item I'll show you on the student shortcut section is the discipline entry wizard. If your administrators enabled this option for teacher gradebooks, if you would have to report a discipline incident on a student, all you would have to do is click the D, and it opens up a discipline wizard. And what you would do is go down and fill out any information that's required, and you'll notice everything with a red asterisk is a required field. So I could select my incident, and I can type in a description. I can put the time of the day, the incident date, if there were any student victims involved, the building, and notice this is filled in by default, on school property or grounds, and there are other options that you can pick. So if it was outside or while you're on bus duty, you can enter in that information as well. And then location details tells the discipline administrator where this happened within the building. I can add additional incident details and then the time that this happens. If you show discipline incidents on the portal, you can check this box and you can publish that information out to the portal. So if your administrators ask you not to check the box, just make sure you leave it unchecked. A lot of times districts will decide, well, they would want the discipline administrator to publish that information out to the portal. So once you fill that in and click Save, what will happen is the person who's in charge of discipline will instantly receive an email that the discipline incident was entered for this particular student. Okay, so as we just work across the columns, you'll notice we have our birth date, the grade level the student is in, and then we have our roster code column. Now, the roster code column can be used for your information, and you can print out reports. Remember, I showed you in the report dropdown, we can print roster code reports. So if I wanted to change this report, by default, you have prepared and unprepared, but you'll see in our database we have an additional one called disruptive. And so your administrators can add any kind of a roster code that you would like to have added into the system. So I'm going to go ahead and just show you how this works. I'll put one in as unprepared and one in as disruptive. And when I click the Save button, this information will automatically be saved. Now, let's talk about taking attendance, because that is our next column. So to take the attendance, it's really easy to do. And what I will point out is whenever a secretary or the person who's in charge of entering attendance, or your attendance officer, takes attendance in the office, you'll notice that it will display in your class. This is a real-time system. And what I mean by that is if I mark someone absent in my class and click the Save button, that information's automatically recorded into the system. And then the secretaries will address issues as necessary as far as your attendance bearing period goes. So let's talk about that real quick before we go any further. Most districts either have attendance taken for students, and when I say that I mean daily attendance, during period 1 or during a homeroom period. So again, this is where your daily attendance is taken, and it will be required that you take attendance each day. That attendance information again goes right into the systems, and then the attendance officer will take care of her end of the attendance, such as gathering notes and putting other notes into the system regarding the student's absence. But again, the minimum, you're going to have to take a daily attendance, whether it's first period or homeroom. Now, with that being said, you can take attendance throughout the day in any period you wish to take. That information is strictly for you, and then you can go back and review or print attendance reports out of the report icon here on the attendance roster. So what you'll notice here is this student was listed as tardy, all right, and that was entered in by the attendance officer. This student was marked absent by the attendance officer. And what you'll notice is because they're marked absent for the day, this is locked. And if I click on it, I cannot do anything with this. I cannot change the status of this. By default, all students are listed as present. So if that is true, you are still required to go up to the top and click the Save button. So if every student was present, except maybe the one that the office had entered in, you still have to take attendance. And what you'll want to notice is when I clicked on Save, it will show me that my attendance was just taken a few seconds ago. Now that doesn't mean I'm completely locked out of that. I can still enter in information. If I realize I had missed someone, I can mark them absent quite easily. And the way you do that is if I click one time on my present icon, it will change it to absent. If I click a second time, it will change that indicator to a tardy. Notice that when I am selected on this cell, I have an arrow that points to the right. If I click this arrow, I get some additional options that I can enter in for the student. So I can put in here why the student was tardy, and I can even put additional notes. I need a V in here. And I can save that. And what you'll see is when I hover over this, I will see the note that I've entered in for this student. The same is true if I mark someone absent. Some districts ask that teachers use an absent reason. Now, we only have class information in this particular database, but I know some schools want all of their absence marked illegal or unlawful. And you can do that if that is listed in your drop-down list. You can pick your attendance reason and save that. Of course, I can take additional notes here, just like I did in my tardy. And when you're done entering that information, of course, all you would have to do is click Save. You can change the status. So if you're set to absent, and you can see here, I've clicked on the student and made him absent, but really he was tardy, I can come in and change that, and you'll see that this icon changed over here. Another thing you can do is, rather than marking that student tardy, perhaps the student is leaving early for band. So I can put in here a class dismissal. And I can add a note as well. And I can save that. And you can see now this student's going to be listed as dismissed. So if I've already saved, but now I've made some changes, all I have to do is come back to the top and click the save icon, and it will tell me that it's been saved. Now, one thing I'd like to point out is if you come back to today's personal schedule, you'll notice all of these classes have red exclamation points, and that's a visual indicator to me that I have not taken attendance for these courses, but I have taken attendance for my first period course. And in this database, our first period course is our attendance bearing period. So this means anyone I've marked absent in this class is absent for the day. There are some additional indicators in the system, absence for other periods, absent for the day, and you'll notice this student who was entered absent by the secretary is listed as absent for the day. There's an indicator that a note was handed in, so I can see the student was tardy, but he's turned in a note, and so and I can see here with ET, that's an excused tardy, okay? And you'll notice when I hover over it, it does give me information about this, this particular attendance event. I can see the tally that students were dismissed. I can see their assigned homeroom, and then we have some additional indicators in here, which is your LEP, your 504, and your IEP indicator. If the district has uploaded IEPs for teachers to view, and the student is listed as having an IEP, and I click on this purple dot, which I know I'm pretty positive we don't have one uploaded. Yeah, I don't have one uploaded for the student, but you'll, if there is one available, it would open up for me. There is an audit trail on IEPs, so if you are required to view a student's IEP each day, when you click on the IEP indicator, the office or the administration will know that you've viewed that student's IEP. And then, of course, it shows your actual and potential minutes. This is a 50-minute class, and you'll notice the students who came in tardy or left early. It gives you the actual minutes and then the potential minutes. So again, like I mentioned before, first period or homeroom is going to be a required attendance period, but you can take attendance throughout the day if that's how you would want to work within your classes throughout the day. And you'll notice, as by default, all students are present. Now, notice this student was absent for other classes. So, you know, whether they were dismissed or they came in late, at some point in the day, they were absent for other classes. So there's a lot of information on this attendance roster page. Now, you may have noticed when I first opened my attendance roster, I came into a seating chart, and that was set up as my default view for taking attendance. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to switch over to the seating chart. And this is new this year for the Teacher Connect Gradebook. One of the things that I noticed right away is pretty big. So there is a way that you can actually make this screen a little bit smaller, which is if you hold your control key down and you use your scroll wheel on your mouse, I can zoom in and out so that I can see more areas within the seating chart. I think I went too far there. So this way, it's a little bit more manageable, and then if you have your students in groups, you could see those a little bit better. So let me talk to you about just some of the options on here. Of course, we have our toggle button and our calendar. We have a settings button. Now this settings is where you would come in and decide what you want to show on your seating chart, just like we did in our attendance roster chart. And you can see it's first, last, or first name only, and I can decide if I want my profile picture to show, or a medical or an allergy alert or a guardian alert. Any indicators, so maybe I don't really want to see my indicators here, but I do want to be able to take attendance. And I can leave my quick icons available in the screen as well. But what you can do is I can change the number of columns. So if I wanted to put in 8 columns, and 8 rows and save it, you'll see the screen is going to refresh and it's going to add my extra columns in. So by doing this, it will allow you to move student seats around. So if I have my students set up in groups, I can click and drag my students into their appropriate groups. All right, so you can see that this is pretty easy to work with. Once I make my changes, if I click Save, my attendance roster is saved. Okay. The other thing, like I mentioned earlier, is we can take attendance from the attendance roster screen, and it works or from the seating chart screen, and it works just like the roster screen. So one click marks the student absent, another click marks them tardy, and of course we can use our additional sidebar to put in notes and other information. Also, this is a new feature, and this is nice. If you print this out into a PDF document, it shrinks your class down so that even if you have a bigger seating chart, everything will fit onto one page. And you'll notice it opens up in a PDF file, and then you can have this handy for a substitute teacher or anyone else who would be in your class. All right, and of course, if the students' pictures were here, they would display as well. So the last screen I will show you that's available on the roster is my class roster. I better save it. Let me save it real quick. Pay attention to your notes. It just basically told me that my information wasn't saved, so I wanted to go back and make sure I saved it. So this is your class roster view. And you'll see in my class roster, I'm only showing the student's first name, and I also have shortcuts. Now, what I've done here is I've really tried to make this, only have the information in here that I really want to see, because one of the things you can do is put this out into an Excel spreadsheet. When I put this out into Excel, I can use this sheet as my grade entry sheet. Now, I know it does come out with a lot of information, but what you can do is take the rows and just, delete them. So if all I really want is my student's first and last name, or right now it's just a first name because that's what I was showing on my roster. You know, I've just created my blank Excel spreadsheet for grade entry. We have asked the programmers to make us a blank grade entry sheet, but at this time it's not available. So at any time, like I said, just come out and export your class roster, and you can just create your own blank sheet. One other thing I will show you here is I have Parent Portal Access icon or column visible in my class roster. This is also visible within the gradebook. So what you'll notice is when I hover over this, I can see when a parent has last logged into the portal, and if I click on that parent's name, it will give me a view of what the parent sees when they are in the parent portal. I don't know if this opened in another page. So anyways, like I said, if you hover over here and click on the parent's name, it should, I think my pop-up blocker is preventing that from happening. So make sure your pop-up blocker is not turned on because it is truly a pop-up window. But again, if you hover it over it and then click on the parent's name, you'll be able to get a view of the parent portal specifically related to this class. So that is our attendance roster training. We hope you enjoyed it. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact the CSIU. Thank you and have a great day.